Hello gamers and welcome to another YouTube video. Today on something I don't play too often, a light tank, but not just any light tank, a light tank that launches mini nuclear devices at its opponents and makes it cry. Enjoy the T49 video. So you may wonder why the T49? Well, simply guys, I'm covering all the tanks that have gotten buffed or buffed big enough to make a difference. And you can see that the T49 has a whole bunch of changes, some more relevant than others. The HP ones are very relevant because all light tanks in 2.0, I think, basically got an HP buff to bring them more into brawling possibilities. Definitely important for a light like a T49 that brawls to begin with. Mobility buffs, pretty nice as well. But then it's, of course, mainly about this is the right gun, so the dispersion went down, the aiming time went down, the dispersion third traverse went down, the heat lost some damage but in return gained some pen on that one, and then of course the second heat got 200 millimeters. Now the difference between 150 and 200 is huge. 200 is enough to pen lower plates, many more sides, etc. So like it's really huge. Take into consideration like how big this actually is together with all the rest of the gun handling buffs, etc. HP as well towards being more brawly. All right, so welcome to the T49 first replay. We ended up playing this tank. You know, we're going over the tanks that got buffed, and you already saw it in the beginning. Does it get quite a decent buff to this gun actually, for a derp. So the first tip to give when playing a T49, especially when you play with a damage setup, is to turn off the chant altogether, because your teammates are not gonna be very happy at all with your gameplay half the time. But remember, you're a T49, you're more of a damage dealer than you are a light tank when you're playing with this big gun, depending on the map, of course. If you're the only light on Prokhorovka, then yeah, sure, you know, like on the second setup, I still have a spotting setup. But if not, like on this battle on Live Oaks, potentially dealing damage might be the way forward. And after playing this a bunch, I will say that the HE very situational ammo, it's the heat ammunition that ends up being the main contestant for anything. So we're driving down here. It's very aggressive, and sadly for us, the 430U has seen us and decided to YOLO us. Tap him on the lower plate, set him on fire, 777, and the 430U is dead. This is how you do 2.5k combined in, well, 3.5 seconds. So that was pretty successful. Find a lot of damage, find a lot of assists. The 430U goes back to the garage. Who would have thought that the FVs would be useful? Intuition to HE here because the standard B is easily pennable, but sadly for us, that takes so long that the 430U rams into him, so lose a little bit of damage. It's still 789. It's a quick 3k combined in, I don't know, what is this, 20 seconds of actual gameplay. So, you know, this tank, honestly, I played it a decent amount now. It's very fun for like a... You know, because the difference with this and an FV is that you actually have to use your brain to play a T49 properly, and with the FV, you, well, you know. So the way that this tank is like designed, it's kind of interesting. You know, we find an FV 841 to the face. We spot out the pattern as well. That's 4.5k combined. If you want to have some fun, you're definitely playing this tank with this gun, to be honest. And we would love to go and tap those TDs in the back of them, but the pattern at the building, I feel like he needs to die first for us to be able to kill him. But yeah, like I said, the HE very situational. Mainly going to be using the heat ammunition because, well, with 200 pen, it's honestly not that bad now. You know, like going through a lot of lower plates, sides, etc. Of course, it's heat, which has its own downsides. You know, tracks and all, but nonetheless, you could see this was a very effective game so far. I mean, doing quite a bit of damage. We find the Ashigaru, which we actually don't end up penning, which is interesting because it's a Japanese CD on wheels. So like I'm not sure where the armor would be located on exactly, but you know, nonetheless, 457 is not a bad amount of damage whatsoever. It's actually a very respectable amount of damage. And you can see, like, you know, playing this tank, it's honestly just kind of fun. You know, you just peek over, you drip some people in the face. It's not always going to work. That's a bad shot, actually, altogether. I shot the back of the turret of the FV. The back of the turret on the FV is super lightly armored. So definitely the wrong decision there to shoot the lower when it should be shooting the back. Missing out on like 400 damage because of that. So, you know, something to keep into account. Chasing down the Manticore as well, who is trying to make it out. Wanted to go for that shot, but with a 21-second reload and the game coming to an end, you don't really want to risk it either. You know, it's like, is it worth to risk it up at that point? No, just close the distance and miss him. Not the greatest aim, again, but, you know, nonetheless, it goes into the tracks, which is the downside, of course. You know, sometimes it will just go into the track. And the Manticore has HE ammunition, which is also interesting. You know, like, I keep forgetting that the Manticore got its ammo buffed, so that is actually a legit possibility that they use HE. It's kind of annoying. But it does happen. A little bit of ramming damage, but nothing really worth talking about. My driver has died, and we're still getting shot at by the GW, who, for some reason, really had a vengeance quest against us, because I think he shot us like 3 or 4 times this battle, so, you know, there's that. Luckily for us, you know, the FV coming in to save us again. What is this? This is what we call a quick 8k combined in 4 minutes on live hours. I mean, many people would be very, very happy to get a game like this in this time span on a light tank, you know, because it's a very, very good light tank battle. Tapping the VK for 793. Yeah, it's a quick 9k combined. Very, very good battle. 9k that could have been 10k, honestly. And like I said, you know, this gun, honestly, with this equipment, it stabs, all the experimental stuff, is pretty decent. You know, and finishing it off with 472 in the back of the IS-32 turret. Yeah, you could say that was pretty potent. So as I was saying, this kind of tank, you know, you don't really play a T49 for performance. I don't think this is the kind of tank where you're gonna be like looking out too much for high DPGs and stuff either. But it's good to have some, you know, fun tanks you enjoy playing from time to time that are a little bit more relaxed, I guess. And honestly, I think this tank would fit that role well. And the buffs that have been given to it make it probably a lot more enjoyable. Because, like, let's be real, it was never a real light tank anyway. So playing some meme light tank that is like bad on top of it is kind of annoying most of the time. Now it doesn't feel that bad. We got a ghost town though, and you can see we do have a spotting setup. So sometimes, you know, you just gotta do the do. And since this is ghost town and it's really a hard map to play for damage, it's completely fine to have a spotting setup. See the 1390. If I hit this, I mean, I'm a god, but you know, probably not gonna happen on that distance. We spot out a T62A driving towards 0 line. That's also not something to really pen with a T49. I mean, you could try to shoot heat at it and get something out of it, but it's really not going to do too much either. Could be greedy. Got to be careful though, you know, nonetheless. You always got to be careful. T62A taking some damage, unbelievable. A bad T62A player. Completely new phenomenon, never seen before. I thought all T62A players were giga at the game. Apparently not. But yeah, no, this is just like a fun tank, and you should play it as that. And definitely not play it as a light tank, right? That should be the main takeaway from the video. If you play this as a light tank, it's probably gonna be not that fun, you know? There's light tanks that play like a light tank, and there's light tanks that don't play like a light tank, right? And this one is one of those that don't play like a light tank. Like, with the RHM, for example, as well, it doesn't really play like a light tank either, because they just don't have the quality aspects needed to be good light tanks, you know? So, keeping that in consideration, this has not been the most dynamic ghost town battle, and this is also, you know, light tanks are generally not really good for me, because, how do I say this? If you're sitting in the bush for more than a minute, it gets kind of boring, you know? Like, this is why I could never be a tank destroyer main either, because like, how are you going to be able to sit at A4 for the whole game and do nothing and shoot like once or twice and be like, oh man, that was fun, you know? Like, I don't get it, how people do that. I don't get how they do it for thousands and thousands and thousands of battles. I mean, the same fucking goes for ID, right? But you know, it's always made me wonder how people are able to sit in passive positions for so long and do nothing and be like doing that day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. It's one of the great mysteries of World of Tanks. What out to Udes? I mean, you're really tempted to shoot again here, but the 3090 looked like he was going towards the field, so taking a shot now could be the end, right? So you don't really want to risk it. This is one of those scenarios where you really have to be just slow and passive and waiting it out altogether. It's just the way it is. All right. This is my least favorite kind of gameplay. That together with TD gameplay, just chilling in a bush, nothing's happening. You don't have any support either because everybody's on the other side of the map. The enemy team's not doing anything. Your team's not doing anything. It's like the urge to drive through a bush, line, and just go kill something is very, very high, to be honest. But patience is a virtue. You gotta train that patience, you know? I will say when you're as used to playing close up as I am, having patience is one of the more difficult aspects of the game, you know? You kind of just wanna drive and kill them. But no, honestly, I think the buffs on this tank, they hit the sweet spot for it. I don't think there's much more potential to... Did I miss this? Dude, I missed that tree falling over. Like, looking back at it at the replay, I see the tree. I was really confused how... Look, I was very confused here how I was spotted. And now in the replay, I've actually noticed that the tree fell over in the road in front of me. Like, when I was sitting on the... Then I was sitting on the bushes. Like, how did I miss that tree? I mean, I load heat, I killed the T62A. So he's definitely in the 8-9 line bushes. I just, you know, sometimes you see in replays things that you missed. I may have been reading chat or something, but like, I don't know how I would miss that. I think I was wondering if the T62 has optics or something. But no, he didn't pull out a 430 or the 430, the 140, and we're going to push for him anyways. And this is the funny part of this tank, you know, like just go past him, boom, clap, next, you know, just YOLOing people, YOLOing one tier 10 medium, YOLOing another tier 10 medium. So, you know, we're having a pretty good time. You know, just YOLOing over some tier 10 mediums that are sitting in bushes altogether. And now I think we already figured out as well that there is the 3090 in the road. We didn't even need the 3, right? We did it simple by, I don't know, by understanding. I need somebody to kill this guy, though. That would be nice. Take 2 from the 3090. Thankfully, it's only 2. But, you know, like sometimes... patience gets rewarded. So the first half of this game, absolutely nothing happening, and then all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. People are YOLOing through the bush line. Light tanks are pushing up, and like 60 seconds, it turns from a completely even game to a 5-1. You know, where you have, let's say, 6k combined, and it's just interesting how that works, right? How that can just like spiral that quickly, that soon. But we're gambling a little bit that, you know, the T95, yeah, he could be at K0, and if he's at K0, then we die, and the game's over, and it's very sad. Same for the FV. However, the odds of them being on K4 are much, much higher. That shot did not look like it was gonna clap him, but quick 747 into the back of the IS-32. Hello, have a good day. Hope you had fun. So, you know, if this tank is hitting, it's crazy, honestly. It can, like, I'm certain that there's going to be somebody at some point, I didn't play it enough for that does like a 8 to 10k in the T49. With the right amount of luck, the right amount of paid actors, and the right circumstances, I could see it, honestly. I could see it. It's like 10 heat shells and 3 HE shells, and you're there, you know? Because the heats are like 700, the HE is like 1000, so. You see, like, you know, just like this. And I've got 4K in this, and I didn't even shoot that much. So we're slowly creeping up on the K line because we know that there's an FV, and we know that there's a T95 there, because where else would they be? Right? And the T49's special ability is karma onto FV players, yeah? There's nothing more enjoyable than tapping an FV in the back of the turret for 1000 and making them jump off a cliff, you know? The T95 actually drove all the way towards 1-2 line, which is pretty crazy as well. But, you know, you see patience gets rewarded. Even with the spotting setup, we're able to hit some good shots. Of course, it's a lot worse than the... it's a lot worse. I wanted to shoot a T49, but... Instead, maybe the T60, the T55A, let the shot go, it goes low. But yeah, as I was saying, you want to have the other setup for shooting, but the spotting setup can be very useful as well, of course. And in this battle, it was for sure. And, you know, for having done nothing in the first 5 minutes, the next 5 minutes have been pretty, you know, action-packed and engaging in that regard. Quick 10k combined, I would say. Aiming well on the 183, 955, quick 10k combined. He tries to kill us, he fails. And I think this was a good example of just a crazy ghost town battle. First 5 minutes, absolutely mind-numbing. The next 5 minutes, absolutely glorious. And a lot of rebalancing. So last but not least, it wouldn't be the Dakillzor video, I guess, without doing something absolutely criminal, which you probably shouldn't be doing. But this was at the beginning. I did end up switching the equipment on the T49 later. This was like semi-gun handling. I ended up going full gun handling, as you saw already in the first 2 battles, as a decision to, you know, just focus fully on the gun. Like, why go halfway when you can go fully committed? It's Westfield, which means that, you know, we have to go up and brawl with the heavy tanks, right? I think that's very normal on Westfield. I think that's also, you know, the best possible play for a T49 in general. Just go up and fight the heavies. Why not, right? If you can manage it, maybe you get some great success out of it. You have 200 millimeters heat pen, which means that in this battle, you do have potential to pen, I think, every single tank in the enemy team. From either the lower plate or the side, including the BZ68. I think it should be fine. Which means that you can brawl perfectly fine. Right. So, you know, this indeed goes back to the original suggestion. Make sure that your chat is turned off when you're doing this, so you don't get annoyed by people complaining. The Zwilling's the first victim here. And yeah, you know, he had a great time in his tank that... he spent a lot of time getting, or he wailed it. Either way, you know, he's probably not very happy right now. I wouldn't be very happy if there's a T49 peeking me on Westfield and sending me back to the garage. Personally, I would be unhappy. I don't know about you, but I got a feeling that I'd be like, okay, whatever, you know? Not enough to pen the side plate of an IS-6 though. Gotta be careful with the peaks, because, you know, at the end of the day, it's still a T49, not a T69. Peeking hold on against IS-6s. Making the peak again and, you know, tapping the IS-6 at the back for 705. I mean, this is the hold down T49 gameplay. You never know you need it, but that's what you're getting anyways. So far, you know, we're playing the heavy side. We're 1.8k damage in. Everything's going pretty well so far. Bought out the IS-6. I would think the side turret should pen, and it probably would, but I feel like maybe it hit a bit high. You know, maybe it was slightly high onto the IS-6, which is, you know, it's a shame, but again, you gotta remember that it's a T49, so it's not really known for its high accuracy gun, and my people from behind end up killing him. I see an opportunity to peek the BZ, but honestly, guys, I'm gonna be real. Even if this peak ends up working out, this is a very dumb peak, alright? There's TDs on my right, there's TDs on my left, you know, there's TDs everywhere. It ends up working, but that doesn't mean that it's not a dumb peak. You know what I mean? Something can work and still be stupid. You know, that was a stupid peak. And no matter the fact that it worked, it will remain a stupid peak. Now, peek and hold on against the BZ 166. We're just hitting him with confusion, aiming for the cupola, tapping the cupola. And, you know, so far for playing Westfield on the heavy side, doing pretty well for a T49, I think. You know, 3.2k damage. Probably more than most people would do playing their heavy on this map to begin with. And the BZ68, well, you know, like I said, lower plate, tapping him for 700 as well. Just T49 being T49, I guess. And in these kind of games, you know, when you're doing this, it's incredibly funny, right? It's just, okay, it's like, it's kind of criminal. Like, should you be doing this? No. Is it funny when it works? Yes. We spotted an issue on our left, but, you know, the good thing is we have so much HP, it doesn't even really matter. We're loading HE for this poor SU 130, which of course, you know, takes 951 to the face. You mount him on top of it to add insult to injury, make him smash the computer and log off for the day, go back to War Thunder. You know, at least he doesn't have to deal with the bullshit there. And yeah, you know, it's a quick 5k with some assists on top of it on Westfield, brawling as a heavy tank and a light tank. I'd say that was pretty successful, you know. Nonetheless, right? But if you see a T49 going up on Westfield in the future, I am sorry, okay? Don't blame me. It can work. As always, gamers, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will see you guys all on the very next one.